Your soulmate is trying to reach you. The hidden sign you must understand before you meet it was 2:17 in the night, the kind of silence that doesn't just exist around you but inside you too, like the world had paused and was waiting for something to happen, something only you were meant to notice. You were lying on your bed, staring at your phone without really seeing anything, your thumb scrolling out of habit while your mind drifted somewhere deeper, somewhere quieter, somewhere you didn't usually go. There was a strange feeling in your chest, not pain, not anxiety, but something incomplete, like a sentence that was never finished, like a memory that refused to fully form. You tried to ignore it, the way you always do, distracting yourself with random content, meaningless noise, anything that could keep you away from that feeling. But tonight, it wasn't going away. It was getting stronger. Heavier. More real. And then suddenly, without any warning, your phone screen lit up on its own. No notification sound. No vibration. Just a soft glow cutting through the darkness of your room. You frowned, slightly annoyed, thinking it was just another glitch, but something made you pick it up anyway. And the moment your eyes focused on the screen, everything inside you stilled. A message. Unknown number. No name. No picture. Just one single line that felt like it didn't belong to the outside world at all. Are you feeling this too? Your breath slowed without you realizing it. Your mind tried to respond logically, telling you it could be spam, a mistake, some random message sent to the wrong person. But your heart reacted differently. It didn't question it. It recognized it. Like those words weren't new, like they had always existed somewhere inside you, waiting for the right moment to surface. You stared at the message for a long time, longer than you should have, your fingers hovering over the keyboard, ready to reply, but something stopped you. Not fear. Not doubt. Just the realization that you didn't even understand what you were supposed to be feeling. So you locked your phone and placed it beside you, closing your eyes, hoping sleep would take over and silence whatever was happening inside you. But sleep didn't come easily. And when it finally did, it didn't feel like sleep at all. You found yourself standing on a long, empty road, surrounded by a soft, endless fog that made everything look distant yet strangely familiar, like a place you had never been to but somehow remembered. The air felt still, almost waiting, and then you saw them. A figure standing far ahead, unmoving, silent, but undeniably present. You couldn't see their face clearly, couldn't make out details, but none of that mattered, because something inside you already knew who they were. Not your mind, not your memory, but something deeper, something older. Your heart began to race as you started walking toward them, each step feeling heavier and lighter at the same time, like you were moving toward something you had lost and something you were afraid to find again. The closer you got, the stronger the feeling became, until it was almost overwhelming, until it felt like your entire existence was centered around that one moment, that one connection. And then, just when you were close enough to hear them breathe, they spoke. You took too long. Their voice was calm, steady, but it carried something underneath, something you couldn't ignore. Not anger, not sadness, but something deeper. Something that made your chest tighten instantly. And before you could respond, before you could even process what those words meant, your eyes snapped open and you were back in your room, your breath uneven, your heart racing like you had just run through something real, not imagined. Morning came like it always does, sunlight slipping through your window, familiar sounds filling the space, everything looking exactly the same, but you weren't the same anymore. Something had shifted inside you, something subtle but undeniable. Throughout the day, you began noticing things you had never paid attention to before. The clock showing 11:11 again and again, making you pause every time without knowing why. A random song playing in the background, its lyrics hitting you differently, like they were meant for you. Somewhere I belong. You heard it once, then again in a different place, then again from someone else's phone, and it stopped feeling like coincidence. It started feeling like a pattern, like something was trying to reach you in ways you couldn't ignore anymore. That evening, you sat alone in a cafe, your coffee untouched, your thoughts louder than the conversations around you, and then it happened. Someone walked past you, and without thinking, you looked up. Your eyes met theirs for just 1 second, but that second stretched into something infinite. The noise around you disappeared, the world blurred, and all you felt was recognition, deep, intense, undeniable recognition. Not attraction, not curiosity, but something that felt like it had always existed between you, something unfinished, something waiting. And before you could react, before you could even understand what you were feeling, they were gone. You turned immediately, your heart pounding, but they weren't there. No one had left. No one had entered. And yet, they were gone. Completely. That night, sleep didn't come at all, because every time you closed your eyes, that moment replayed, over and over, until it stopped feeling like a memory and started feeling like a question. And right on time, at exactly 2:17, your phone lit up again, the same number, the same silence, but a new message. You saw me today. Your heart raced as you picked up the phone, your fingers moving faster than your thoughts this time. Who are you? You sent it and stared at the screen, watching as the typing appeared, then stopped, then disappeared completely, leaving you in a silence that somehow felt louder than any answer. The days that followed only made things more intense, more real, more impossible to ignore. You started feeling a presence even when you were alone, like someone was always just slightly out of reach. Mirrors felt different, like your reflection wasn't entirely yours. One day, in a library, you picked up a random book and opened a random page, only to read a line that made your entire body freeze. Soulmates don't meet by chance. They are guided by signs only they can understand. And at that exact moment, your phone vibrated again, a new message appearing as if it had been waiting for that realization. You're getting closer. And that's when it truly hit you. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. This was something unfinished, something that had started long before you were ready to understand it, something that had been trying to reach you again and again, through signs, through feelings, through moments you almost ignored. And the most terrifying part wasn't that it was happening. It was that deep down, you knew it had always been there, waiting for you to finally stop running and start remembering. The moment that message appeared, something inside you stopped resisting. You're getting closer. It didn't feel like a warning anymore. It felt like confirmation. Like everything you had been ignoring your whole life was now standing right in front of you, refusing to be denied. You sat there in the silence of your room that night, staring at your phone, but this time you weren't confused. You were aware. Every small detail from the past few days started aligning in your mind like pieces of something much bigger than you had ever imagined. The time 2:17. The repeated patterns. The dream. The eyes in the cafe. The feeling of presence. The line in the book. None of it was random. None of it was coincidence. It was all leading somewhere. Or rather, it was leading you back to something you had already left behind. Your fingers moved slowly as you typed again, your breath steady but deep. Tell me what this is. This time, the reply didn't take long. This is what you felt and chose to forget. You read it again and again, each time feeling it sink deeper. Forget. Not lost. Not taken. Forgotten. That meant it was still yours. Somewhere. Somehow. When you typed back, your heart beating slightly faster now, not out of fear, but anticipation. The answer came instantly. When it became too real for you to stay. You closed your eyes for a second after reading that. Too real. That word echoed inside you like it belonged there. Because it did. You had always been like that. Every time something got too deep, too intense, too meaningful, you stepped back. You convinced yourself it was better that way. Safer. Easier. But now, it felt like that one pattern had cost you something you were never meant to lose. Something that didn't just disappear, but waited. You picked up your phone again, your hands no longer shaking, but your chest feeling heavier than before. Who are you? You typed again, but this time it wasn't just a question. It was a need. A need to understand, to remember, to finally face whatever this was. The typing appeared almost immediately, but it didn't stop this time. It stayed there longer, like the answer required more than just words. And then finally, it came. I'm the one you felt before you understood what it meant. Your breath caught slightly. That line didn't just answer your question, it opened something inside you. Something buried. Something you had pushed away without even realizing it. You leaned back slowly, your mind no longer trying to reject it. Instead, it started searching. Not outside, but inside. And that's when it happened. Not a clear memory. Not a full picture. But flashes. Small, broken pieces of something that felt real. A voice that made you feel calm without trying. Laughter that didn't feel forced. Conversations that didn't feel like effort. A connection that didn't need explanation. And then, distance. Silence. A choice. Your choice. You opened your eyes quickly, your breathing slightly heavier now. Did I leave? You typed, even though somewhere deep down, you already knew the answer. The reply came slower this time. Yes. Just one word. But it carried everything. No blame. No anger. Just truth. Pure, simple, undeniable truth. You stared at that word, feeling something tighten inside your chest, not pain exactly, but something close. Regret. Not loud, not overwhelming, but quiet and deep. The kind that doesn't break you instantly, but stays with you long enough to change you. Why, you asked, your fingers slower now, your mind no longer rushing, but understanding. And the reply came like it had always been waiting. Because you were afraid of how real it felt. You didn't reply immediately this time. Because you couldn't deny it. Every part of you knew it was true. You had always been afraid of things that felt too real. Because real meant risk. Real meant losing control. Real meant being seen in a way you couldn't hide from. And instead of facing that, you walked away. But now, standing in this moment, reading these words, feeling everything come back in fragments, it didn't feel like protection anymore. It felt like loss. And before you could type anything else, another message appeared. This time, don't run. You read it slowly. Then again. And again. And something inside you shifted. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but deeply. Like a quiet decision being made without words. Because this time, you understood the sign. It was never about numbers, or songs, or coincidences. It was about you. Your fear. Your pattern of leaving before something could stay. And now, for the first time, you weren't trying to escape it. You were facing it. And somewhere, on the other side of that fear, someone was still there. Not chasing you. Not forcing you. Just waiting. That night didn't end the way your other nights used to. There was no distraction, no escape, no attempt to forget what you had just realized. Instead, you stayed there, sitting in the quiet, letting everything sink in slowly, deeply, like your mind was finally allowing something it had been blocking for a long time. The message still glowed faintly on your screen, this time, don't run. You kept reading it, over and over, and with every second, it stopped feeling like a suggestion and started feeling like a choice. Your choice. For the first time, you weren't confused about what was happening. You weren't trying to explain it away. You weren't labeling it as coincidence or imagination. You knew it was real. Maybe not in a way you could prove to someone else, but in a way you couldn't deny to yourself anymore. You took a slow breath and typed something you hadn't expected to say so soon. I won't run. The moment you sent it, your heart started beating faster, not out of fear, but because something had just changed. Something important. The typing appeared almost instantly this time, like the other side had been waiting for that exact moment. Then you're ready to remember. Those words hit differently. Not heavy, not confusing, but clear. Ready. Remember. It meant this wasn't the end of something strange. It was the beginning of something real. You placed your phone beside you and leaned back, closing your eyes for a moment, not to sleep, but to feel. And as soon as you did, it started again. Not a dream this time, not fully. Something in between. Your thoughts became quieter, your breathing slower, and then, without realizing how, you were there again. That same place. But clearer now. The fog wasn't as thick. The air didn't feel distant. It felt close. Real. And in front of you, they were standing again. Not as far this time. Not as unclear. You could almost see their face now, almost recognize the details, but your focus wasn't on that anymore. It was on the feeling. That same feeling that had followed you from the first message, from the cafe, from the dream. But now it wasn't overwhelming. It was calm. Steady. Like it had been waiting for you to stop fighting it. You took a step forward, then another, your movements slow but certain. This time, there was no hesitation. No fear pulling you back. And when you finally stood in front of them, there was no distance left between you. You didn't speak immediately. You didn't need to. Because in that silence, everything was already being understood. And then they smiled, just slightly, but enough to make your chest feel lighter. You stayed, they said softly. And those two words carried more meaning than anything else so far. Because they weren't just about this moment. They were about every moment before this, every time you had chosen to leave, every time you had walked away from something real. And now, you hadn't. You looked at them, your voice steady, your mind clear in a way it hadn't been before. I didn't understand before. They nodded, like they had expected that answer. You weren't supposed to. Not yet. That made you pause. Not yet. It meant this wasn't just about a mistake. It wasn't just about fear. It was about timing. About growth. About becoming someone who could finally face what they once avoided. And now, you asked quietly, what happens now? They didn't answer immediately. Instead, they took a small step closer, close enough that you could feel their presence without any distance left to question it. Now, they said, you see what you couldn't see before. And just like that, something shifted again. Not around you, but inside you. The flashes returned, but this time they weren't broken. They were clearer. Stronger. You saw moments, real moments, not imagined. You saw yourself, different but still you, laughing without holding back, speaking without thinking twice, feeling without fear. And you saw them there, in all of it. Not as a stranger. Not as someone new. But as someone who had always been part of your story, even when you chose to forget it. You saw the connection, not as something sudden, but as something built, something real, something that didn't need explanation. And then you saw the moment everything changed. The moment you pulled back. The moment you chose distance over depth. The moment you told yourself it was too much. Too real. And as that memory settled in, you felt it fully this time. Not just the choice, but the impact of that choice. Not just what you felt, but what they must have felt too. And that's when it hit you completely. This wasn't just about finding your soulmate. This was about becoming the version of yourself who could actually stay when you did. You opened your eyes slowly, back in your room, your chest rising and falling steadily, your mind no longer scattered. The silence around you felt different now. Not empty. Not heavy. But full. Like something had been filled that you didn't even realize was missing. Your phone screen lit up again, one last message appearing as if it had been waiting for you to return. Now you understand the sign. You didn't rush to reply this time. You didn't need to. Because you finally did understand. The hidden sign was never outside of you. It wasn't the time, or the messages, or the patterns. It was your own fear. Your own habit of stepping back when something felt too real. And now that you had seen it, faced it, accepted it, it no longer controlled you. You picked up your phone slowly and typed, "When do I meet you?" This time, the reply came instantly. When you stop seeing this as something separate from you. You read it once, then again, and a small, almost invisible smile appeared on your face. Because now, it made sense. This wasn't about chasing someone. It wasn't about finding something outside. It was about alignment. About becoming ready. About no longer running from what was meant for you. You placed your phone down and leaned back, closing your eyes once more, but this time, there was no confusion, no fear, no questions. Just a quiet certainty. Because somewhere, in a way you couldn't fully explain but didn't need to anymore, you knew. You weren't waiting for your soulmate to arrive. You were becoming someone who could finally meet them. And this time, when that moment came, you wouldn't look away. You wouldn't hesitate. You wouldn't run. The days that followed didn't feel normal anymore, but they didn't feel chaotic either. It was something in between, like your reality had shifted slightly and only you could notice it. The world around you was the same streets, the same people, the same routine, but the way you experienced it had changed completely. You were more aware now, not just of what was happening around you, but of what was happening inside you. Every thought felt clearer, every emotion felt more honest. And most importantly, that constant urge to escape, to distract yourself, to avoid anything too deep, it had started to fade. Not completely, but enough for you to notice the difference. It was like you had spent your whole life running without realizing it, and now, for the first time, you had stopped. And in that stillness, everything you had been avoiding started coming back, not to overwhelm you, but to be understood. You found yourself revisiting moments from your past, not with regret, but with clarity. Conversations you walked away from, connections you didn't fully allow, feelings you dismissed before they could grow. And now, instead of pushing those memories away, you sat with them. You felt them. You understood them. Because now you could see the pattern. It was never about the other person. It was never about timing or circumstances. It was always about you being afraid of something real. And then, one evening, something small but powerful happened. You were walking alone, just like any other day, lost in your thoughts, but not in a heavy way, more like you were observing yourself from a distance. The sky was turning slightly orange, the air calm, everything quiet. And then, without any warning, you felt it again. That presence. But this time, it didn't feel distant. It didn't feel like something you had to search for. It felt close. Very close. Your steps slowed down naturally, not out of fear, but awareness. Your heartbeat stayed steady, your breath calm. And then you saw them. Standing just a few steps ahead of you. Not disappearing. Not blurred. Not unreachable. Real. Completely real. For a moment, you didn't move. Not because you were frozen, but because you were absorbing the moment fully. This was it. Not a dream. Not a message. Not a sign. Reality. You took a slow step forward, then another, your eyes locked with theirs, and once again, that feeling returned, but this time it didn't overwhelm you. It settled inside you, like it belonged there. Like it had always belonged there. You stood in front of them, close enough to see every detail, every expression, every subtle emotion in their eyes. And for the first time, there was no confusion left. No questions. Just understanding. Neither of you spoke immediately. Because words felt unnecessary in that moment. Everything that needed to be understood was already there, in the silence, in the way you looked at each other, in the way neither of you stepped back. And then, finally, they smiled softly and said, "You didn't run this time." You felt something shift in your chest again, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was light. Almost peaceful. "I didn't want to," you replied honestly. And that was the truth. Not because you forced yourself to stay, not because you were trying to prove something, but because you had changed. You had understood something about yourself that you couldn't ignore anymore. They took a small step closer, closing whatever little distance was left between you. "Do you understand now?" they asked quietly. You nodded slowly. It was never about finding you. It was about becoming someone who wouldn't leave when I did. They smiled again, but this time there was something deeper in it, something that felt like relief. Exactly. The air around you felt different now, not because the world had changed, but because you had. The fear that once controlled your choices was no longer leading you. It was still there, somewhere in the background, but it didn't have power over you anymore. You both started walking, side by side, not in a rush, not with any destination in mind, just moving forward naturally, like it was the most normal thing in the world. And as you walked, you realized something important. This connection, this feeling, this person, it wasn't something magical in the way you used to imagine. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't something that removed all your fears or solved everything instantly. It was real. And that's what made it powerful. Because now, instead of running from that reality, you were choosing it. You were staying in it. You were allowing it to exist without trying to control it or escape it. "Do you remember everything now?" they asked after a while. You thought for a moment before answering. Not everything. But enough. And that was true. You didn't need every detail, every memory, every moment from before. You just needed the understanding. The awareness of what this was, and what it meant. And most importantly, what it required from you. They looked at you for a moment, then said something that stayed with you even longer than everything else. The connection was never broken. Only your awareness of it was. You let that sink in slowly. Because it explained everything. Nothing was lost. Nothing was destroyed. It was only hidden behind your own fear, your own choices, your own need to protect yourself from something you didn't fully understand. And now that you did understand it, it wasn't something distant anymore. It was right here, right in front of you. Real, present, undeniable. You stopped walking for a second, looking at them again, not with curiosity this time, but with certainty. And this time, you said quietly, "I'm not leaving." They didn't respond immediately. They just looked at you, like they were feeling the weight of those words, making sure they were real. And then they nodded, a small but meaningful gesture. "I know." The night slowly grew darker around you, but it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a beginning. Not of something sudden or dramatic, but something steady, something grounded, something real. And as you stood there, no longer searching, no longer questioning, you realized something that changed everything. Your soulmate was never trying to find you. They were waiting for you to stop running from yourself. And now that you had, there was nothing left to chase. Nothing left to prove. Only something to live. Together, the night didn't feel like it was ending, and for the first time in your life, you didn't want it to. There was no urge to rush home, no need to distract yourself, no voice in your head telling you to step back before things got too real. Instead, there was a quiet calmness inside you, something steady and grounded that you had never felt before. You stood there beside them, not thinking about what comes next, not worrying about what this means or where it leads. Because for the first time, you weren't trying to control the moment. You were allowing it. And that changed everything. The air felt softer, the silence felt full instead of empty, and the presence of this person beside you didn't feel overwhelming anymore. It felt right. Like something that had finally returned to where it belonged. You both continued walking slowly, side by side, your steps naturally falling into rhythm without effort. There was no need for constant conversation, no pressure to fill the silence, because the silence itself felt like a language you both understood. After a while, you stopped near a quiet stretch of road, the same kind of place you had seen in your dreams, but this time it wasn't distant or unclear. It was real, grounded, present. You looked at them, really looked this time, not trying to figure them out, not trying to remember more, but simply seeing them as they were, here, now. And in that moment, something settled inside you completely. "I used to think this would feel different," you said quietly, almost to yourself. They turned slightly toward you, listening. "I thought it would be louder, more intense, something overwhelming. But this feels calm." They smiled softly, understanding exactly what you meant. "That's because it's not new," they said. "It only feels new because you're finally allowing yourself to stay." You let those words sink in, realizing how true they were. You had spent so much time expecting something dramatic, something undeniable in a loud way, that you never noticed the quiet truth when it was right in front of you. Real connection wasn't supposed to feel like chaos. It was supposed to feel like peace. And that's exactly what this was. Not something that shook you, but something that steadied you. Not something that made you lose yourself, but something that made you more aware of who you really were. You took a slow breath, feeling lighter than you had in a long time. "I get it now," you said, your voice calm but certain. "It was never about finding you. It was about becoming someone who wouldn't walk away when things felt real." They nodded, their expression soft but knowing. "And you did," they replied. "That's why I'm here." For a moment, neither of you spoke again, but this silence was different from all the others. It wasn't filled with questions or uncertainty. It was filled with understanding. With acceptance. With something that didn't need to be explained anymore. You realized then that this wasn't the kind of story that ends with a dramatic conclusion. There was no final twist, no sudden revelation left waiting. Because the real ending had already happened the moment you chose to stop running. Everything after that wasn't an ending at all. It was a continuation. A life that you were finally ready to live without fear controlling your choices. You looked ahead at the quiet road stretching forward, not knowing exactly where it would lead, but not needing to know either. Because for the first time, the unknown didn't feel scary. It felt open. Possible. Real. And then you felt it, something subtle but powerful. Not outside you, not coming from them, but from within yourself. A sense of alignment. Like everything inside you had finally stopped pulling in different directions and settled into one clear understanding. This was what you had been missing. Not them. Not the connection. But the version of yourself that was ready for it. I was waiting for you this whole time, wasn't I? You said slowly, more as a realization than a question. They looked at you and smiled gently. Yes, they said. And so was I. That answer stayed with you, not because it was surprising, but because it completed something inside you. This wasn't about one person finding another. It was about two paths finally aligning at the moment they were meant to. Not earlier, not later. Exactly now. And as you stood there, you understood something even deeper. Love, connection, soulmates, whatever name you give it, it's not about destiny forcing two people together. It's about timing meeting readiness. It's about becoming the kind of person who can recognize, accept, and stay when something real enters your life. And now, you were that person. Not perfect, not fearless, but aware. And that awareness changed everything. The wind moved gently around you, carrying a quiet stillness that no longer felt empty. You didn't need signs anymore. No repeating numbers, no mysterious messages, no hidden clues. Because the biggest sign had always been inside you. Your fear. And the moment you faced it, understood it, and chose not to let it control you anymore, everything else naturally fell into place. You turned to look at them one last time in that still moment, not because you were afraid they would disappear, but because you wanted to fully take in the reality of this. They were here. Not as a dream. Not as a message. But as someone real, standing beside you in a moment you had finally earned by becoming ready for it. And instead of asking questions, instead of overthinking, you simply smiled. A quiet, genuine smile that came from a place of certainty. Because now you knew. Your soulmate was never trying to reach you from somewhere far away. They were always there, just beyond the version of you that kept running. And the hidden sign you were meant to understand was never outside. It was the part of you that was afraid to stay when something felt real. And the moment you chose to stay, truly stay, without fear, without hesitation, without escape, that's when everything aligned. That's when they appeared. Not as something new, but as something that had always been yours, waiting patiently for you to finally be ready. And now that you were, there was nothing left to chase, nothing left to question, nothing left to fear. Only something to live. Slowly. Honestly. Together.